I'm Mark Fabric from Leeds Beckett University. We are also involved in the project, and I'm kind of speaking on behalf of two other people. Marco Valerio, he's the game developer, and Sophia, she's the game designer. And I'm going to talk about this game, the DesignMyFuture game that we've created for young people to find out a bit more about their skills and what they can do with them and how that might lead to certain occupations or futures that they have in front of them. So let's have a look. First question, why did we decide to do a game? There are quite a lot of games out there, and a lot of European projects have produced video games for young people. And some of them are working fine, some of them fail because they haven't really hit the nerve of the young people they were meant to be for. And we hope that we have put something together that the young people actually want to use. So we're talking about the age group that Pedro mentioned earlier, secondary school, maybe from 13 years old to 17 years old. That's what we've targeted. And what's the game about? What we want them to do is to think about what they're good at and what they're interested in and what their aspirations are. So Pedro's son would talk about being an astronaut, but I don't think that necessarily was the first thing that came to his mind. He might have been inspired by seeing something that astronauts do, and then thinking, well, I can do that. Yeah, that's something I would like to do. Don't know, float in space, for example, or go out in a rocket. Or so it's about skills, but it's also about attitudes. What excites you about being a certain person or having a certain role in your life? Preferences. What are the things you like? What do you not like? One of the things that we ask people as part of the game is whether they like to do things outside in the outdoors, or whether they prefer to do things, say, working in an office or in a different environment. So there are some clear preferences that people have, and they get formed quite early in life. And then there's something about strengths as well. What do people already know that they're good at, which don't necessarily match to the kind of skills that you usually have when you look at a CV. They're sometimes kind of in a different area of how you think about what people are good at. So, for example, if you're really good at getting involved in other people's conflicts and smooth things down, because you can show a lot of empathy, and you generally considered someone who's really good at helping other people in those kind of situations. That's not necessarily something that you find on a CV. That might be implied somewhere that you can do that, but people don't necessarily ask for that. So we looked at a number of different areas that we want the young people to think about, to reflect on, and kind of say, yes, that's something for me, or no, this is not how I would describe myself. The next step is to take all of this, and we've identified 17 of these different characteristics. Take all of these and map them onto potential occupations, potential jobs that are out there. Astronaut could be one of those jobs, and depending on what you put down here, astronaut might be one of the things that is suggested by the game for you to aspire to. But there's likely to be some other jobs as well. And the idea is that we want to show young people what is possible, and perhaps something that they haven't thought about before, that they haven't discussed with their parents, either because their parents have very different ideas, like Pedro said earlier, or because their parents have no ideas and they don't really know what's going on in the world of work at the moment. So it's really to break out of a certain pattern that there might be, where they think, I know there are all these jobs out there, but I can't do that because none of my family has done that before, and none of my friends talk about these kind of jobs or going to university or things like that. So really what we're doing here is show young people what they could potentially do, and hopefully we give them some inspirations for things that they that haven't thought about before. it isn't an end in itself, so the game doesn't do everything that we think the young person should do. It's only the starting point, really, for them on their journey to then find out more and have those conversations with parents, with friends, with teachers. Right, let's have a closer look at how we designed this. We put some principles together, what we wanted the game to be. And the first one is that it's centered around the young person. So it's not telling them what to do, it's really for them to explore things themselves and discover what they can do with the game and what they can do with the information afterwards. It should be playful, that's kind of implicit in this idea that we have a game, but also quite informal. That was one of the feedbacks that came back from the session that we did with young people in the school, that they don't want it to feel like going to school, not like an educational tool. It's really something for them to have a bit of fun with, and but see a purpose in it as well. It should be personable, personalized, and customizable, and this kind of alludes to that they can customize their character, and we have different designs which I'll show you in a minute. We wanted to make sure that the game uses a language that people can understand and that they can identify with. And I'll show you a bit later the database that the European Union uses to try to identify every single job that is possible to take up in the EU across all the countries. And when you look at a database and the way things are described, it sounds quite formal, and it doesn't sound like the language that young people or even older people would normally talk in. So we try to do that in the game, that we found ways of expressing these skills, these preferences, these attitudes in a way that people can relate to. We want them to dip in and out of the game. You don't have to have one session where they just do everything and there's a time pressure, but they can save their progress and come back to it. And it should be a safe environment where they can just explore things, and there's no penalty, there's no commitment really. Yeah, you try something out, and then you change a few things, and you try something else. And it should be rewarding because it's a game. And does anyone here play computer games? Show of hands. Yeah, loads of people. Do you play games on your phone?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Often they work in the way that you get little rewards, yeah, now and then, and that makes you come back, that makes you continue, that makes you spend a lot of time that you could do revising for your exams. And we kind of want to do the same, have a game experience where there's some rewards in there as well. Right, and we can break this game up into 4 chapters. So the first one is where you customize your appearance. And we had this designer. The designer is actually an ex-student from the university where I teach in Leeds, but she's now in Madrid. And she's been doing the work remotely, which worked really well. So it's a very international project. There's a little demo that I'll show you later where you can also see that how all of this is working in practice. But basically, we started out like any good design project with some sketches, and then the programmer and the designer, they work together to rig out these characters so they can move their arms and walk around with their legs, different hairstyles, and so on. And here's a selection of some of the characters, and most of us probably identify with most of these at some point during the day or in our lives. Lola, which one was yours?
The pink hair with the vampire teeth.
This one, yes, yeah. So you can each pick one, how you feel at the moment, maybe, or how you might feel later. We've got a few more. So that's the customization part. Once you've done that, we've used this space travel metaphor where you go into a spaceship and you go to different planets or different worlds. And in each world, you explore some of these skills, preferences, attitudes, whatever it is. And you talk to alien characters. And they ask you some questions, and based on the answers, your profile gradually builds up and you collect these skills and you get some rewards for that. And at the end, when you've gone through that, the game knows quite a few things about you. And based on that knowledge, it can then suggest some potential jobs and some potential futures to you. Right, these are the categories that I mentioned earlier. So there's attitudes in there, there's preferences, there's employability skills. But we also look at things like well-being skills. And Pedro mentioned that earlier. These are the kind of things that parents might talk to their children about, or that we perhaps want them to talk to them about. What are their attitudes? What motivates them? So we have 9 different categories here, which translates to 9 different planets in the game. And like I said before, 70 individual items altogether, which is quite a lot. We might reduce that if we do a bit more testing with the game. Some examples. So under preferences, we've got these. I like activities that are outdoors, indoors. I prefer to work on my own. And we then take these, put them together, and build a little profile of that person. The next step is then to have a little bit of a computer screen where you can explore what jobs match that profile that's been built for you. It looks empty. I think I've taken the wrong screenshot. There should be some information on that. But you can basically go through all the occupations that have come up. If you put all the levers in the right place, if your son had done that, astronaut might come up there. Who knows? Astronaut is in the database. I've checked it earlier. So it's one of the European jobs.
It's possible. It's possible.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah. Spacecraft engineer is the next one kind of in that category. So you can talk to him about that. Now I'm going to go a little bit into what's happening behind the scenes, because as part of this project, we cannot define and describe and come up with all the different jobs that are out there. And there is this database, which is called the ESCO classification system. It's a database that's been developed over a few years. It's actually based on an international classification of occupation. And it uses the concept of skills and competencies together, occupations and qualifications. So there are 3 different pillars, and it has relationships between them. So it looks at what kind of qualifications do you need to become an astronaut? What skills are required to be a psychologist? And it looks at essential skills and non-essential skills. And when you look at this, it's 3,008 occupations. That's quite good. It's nearly 14,000 skills, so they go into a lot of detail. As I said, there are relationships between these, as you would expect. If you look at one particular skill, it shows you these are the occupations that you that need the skills. And it's the other way around as well. You look at an occupation, and it shows you the qualifications and the skills that are needed. It's quite easy to access this. It's quite easy to look at it in English, in Portuguese, in Norwegian, in whatever European language. It's already translated. It's all out there. So it's very easy to access, but it's not very accessible. It's not easy to go through that and make any sense of it if you're looking for a job, if you're thinking about what could I do. That's not what it's designed for. So what we needed to do was build this game that takes the data from the database and presents it in a much more accessible way, and hopefully in a more fun way. So just to show you these pillars: occupation, competency, qualification, and then these relationships across them. That's when it gets really boring and dull, having to go through all of this and trying to make sense of it and bringing it into the game. So you can see angry face, that's me, when I realized that even though all this data is there, we can't actually access it in the way that we want. Because what we wanted to do was see what skills a person has, and then take these skills and say, show me all occupations that match these. And the database can't do that. It can only tell me this one skill is related to that one occupation. I can't put two skills together and say this is the list. So we have to do that ourselves. It also can't apply any weighting to certain skills, where you can say, actually, these 5 are my main interests, and those ones I'm also interested in, but they're not as important. It can't do that either. And the last thing is it looks really boring and it just doesn't look very nice. That's why we put the game in front of it. So what we've done is we have our own skills, these 17 that I talked about. We then manually mapped them to 140 skills from the database. And this sounds like a bit of a cheat, yeah, taking only 140 out of 14,000. But actually, from these 14,000 skills, there's a lot of overlap, and a lot of the skills are just there to say, this is a skill, but it doesn't have any relationship to an occupation. So what we tried to do was find the skills that are core skills for a lot of occupations. So that when you put them all together, naturally, it brings it down to a few occupations that are relevant to you. So, like I said, this is done in a quite a personal language. I enjoy being creative. And you can then map that to the ESCO skill, develop creative ideas, or use strategies for creativity, or some other ones. And then we use a fuzzy logic approach. Any programmers in the room? Any psychologists interested in programming? No? So fuzzy logic means that you don't just say, this matches or this doesn't match. You look at a skill or at a set of skills and say, this might match maybe 60% of the time. And this might match 20% of the time. And then you get something at the end where you say, we're quite confident that these occupations are good for this person, but you're never quite sure. You know? So it's more like suggestions rather than saying, this is right and this is wrong. And then we come up with a list of certain skills, and I made this kind of up. I mean, the relationship is true, but I put that together to make it very obvious. So, if you like to do creative things, and you enjoy some variety, and you follow a work schedule, then, being a stop motion animator might be a good job for you. But there's probably lots of small jobs, and they don't all have to be in this particular area. So that's the principle behind it. Go from our skills to the ESCO skills, the ESCO occupations, and then we present it to the young people. Right, and finally, once you've done all that, and that's where it brings it back to the other resources in the project, you can then share this with your parents or with family or with friends or with teachers or whichever you like. And we talked a little bit about people maybe playing together, but that's something to maybe explore in the next project. Right, and now just to finish this, I'll show you a little demo. So let's start at the beginning, where you start the game and decide which language you want to use. You then log in, so that everything you do is automatically saved, and you can come back to it anytime. Then you customize your character.
Still angry.
Still angry, yes, yeah, it's getting better.
Okay.
So different faces, different outfits. And then there's you walking along. And there will be some instructions, and we'll also have some voiceover. And this is kind of the base at the top where you can then look at the dots, but at the moment we've landed in Monkey World, and we're just looking around, and there'll be some other rewards and things to find. But the key thing that we want really is that you talk to the characters and get some make some decisions about your skills and your preferences and so on. Right, and once you've done that for a bit, you'll also have a rucksack or something where you can put things in that you've looted from around the game. He's doing quite a few things there. And then he's going back to his station. Yeah, and now we can explore the different jobs. So we're still working on it, as I said. There'll be some changes to the interface. So basically, yeah. So these are the 3 jobs I showed you earlier, and you can get some details for each. And we need to think about how best to display this. So this is the information that now comes from the ESCO database. And I think we need to structure that more. But essentially, at this point, then you got different skills that you've selected, and we can also then make some connections and say that we can go from these skills and look at other jobs that are relevant to it. So it's almost like you have a starting point, and then you explore more. And once you're happy with it, then you can, like I said, you can share this with a parent or a teacher or anyone. But you can always come back to it and change your preference a little bit. And sorry, and see what other results are coming back. So yeah, that's the demo of the game. And do you have any questions? No?
Yeah.
This will be available for.
This will be available for free on the website. It's for anyone to use, really. So even though we've built it for that particular age group, it's for anyone to use. And we need to see, because all the information that we're pulling out from the ESCO database is available in, I don't know how many languages there are in the EU. Yeah, many. In theory, we could make this, extend this, and make it work in any language. So that makes it much more accessible. Okay.